Welcome to Get Serious, where at Serious Land Capital, we have successfully funded over $6 million of land deals with industry leading 41% operating margins. Today, I just wanted to share some general takeaways from this mastermind event I went down to in Costa Rica, Nosara, Costa Rica. And if any of you are familiar with Kellen Faulkner and the Uncommon business team, all AI related, probably close to 20 other higher performing entrepreneurs there. I can get into some of the particulars on the key takeaways, but I wanted to comment a bit more just on the endless opportunities that we have in front of us as land investors, assuming that is the case for you or really anybody who operates with a significant business footprint within the US, and particularly if you live there. I imagine most folks listening to this, that is the case. Because when, especially in down markets like this, it becomes so easy psychologically to start thinking, hey, things aren't necessarily working out as well as you were expecting. The opportunities aren't there. Maybe you're just never going to figure out the land game or figure out a piece of real estate that can actually make real money back. And maybe the competition has gotten higher, and you're not sure if you can keep up. Maybe it's saturated. I know all of those thoughts. I've experienced all of them before. I know that is still rampant throughout the industry at the moment here. But especially when you undergo some travel and just again, everybody's well aware that real estate is the single largest asset class worldwide. Something like 400 some odd trillion dollars worth of global real estate value, and a huge chunk of that is within the US. That you really only need the smallest piece in order to still live the life of your dreams for yourself and your family. And it was striking to me again, traveling down to Nosara, which is you could call it like a bit more of a bougie place within Central America. I hadn't been familiar with it before, but it looks like a lot of expats go there. And my understanding is that Costa Rica probably attracts the most investment and expat activity, probably is the furthest along from all of the Central American countries. I may be wrong on that, but that's the impression that I've heard. And seen for myself now at this point. And in this particular area, kind of beachside, but still within kind of mountainous jungle terrain. There are some just spectacular houses and hotels and just physical infrastructure there. And any of you who might have traveled to other vacation destinations or even like the larger ski resorts like Park City and so forth, and you're aware of some of these 15,000 square foot homes with the floor to ceiling windows and so forth. They are replicating a lot of that down there. Like, it is pretty, again, amazing. I think, just being in this Central American heat for, pretty much the entire year, and not easy to move materials around, not easy to get there. I don't think they have a port, and the roads, I think it's only like 45-ish miles from the, you know, nearest, larger city where there's a more an international airport, Liberia. And it takes, roughly 3 hours to drive that, because much of the back half, or, going from Liberia to Nosara, is just, divoted gravel or dirt roads. And so you just naturally can't go as quickly, harder to transport, a lot of twisty turns, mountainous terrain. So it's like, it's not easy to do anything out there. And yet you're still seeing just these massive glass panes and concrete and so forth. And, people building in really difficult, hot conditions. Again, this is like in the middle of the jungle. Monkeys are outside of our hotel room and everything. But it still struck me at, kind of the level of demand, the creativity, the fact that human ingenuity will figure out how to get something done. And there's just plenty of contractors and engineers who actually understand how to build luxury units in an area like that. So that to me was just fascinating to note. And meanwhile, again, like pretty much all the roads locally, I mean, some of these were just huge divots, almost like creek beds running through the middle of the roads. And a lot of folks are just riding ATVs around and so forth. Very interesting vibe. And, not necessarily cheap either. It's probably, basically similar to what you'd pay for nicer spots back in the US. So, again, that probably accounts for the clientele that they're attracting, and just the more difficult infrastructure build outs. But still, like the rental rates on some of these larger homes, like they're fraction of what, like if you wanted to get something similar in like a Park City, the daily rate, I don't know, 15 plus grand a night would be like a monthly rate in Costa Rica and Nosara specifically. So there's still big arbitrage opportunities from that perspective. But as far as like day to day, it's not necessarily there. And, I had never seen this before either. Just drinkable water at most locations, like the tap. And, you always want to be double checking. And even when folks say it's safe, hey, you're like, hey, as an American now, I've just been so unaccustomed to trusting that outside of being in the developed world, like, US, Canada, most of Europe, and, um, maybe Japan or something like that, Australia. But for the vast majority of the world, it's like, yeah, you got to make sure you have your bottled water. And it was just, again, kind of mind bending, because you're just thinking, oh, this is just the way it is, such a basic necessity. It is just never going to be implemented for whatever reason in some of these countries. So, like, that was very interesting to see and experience firsthand. Like, okay, yeah, development continues in a upward trend here, and hopefully that continues to spread out further. But again, like, just getting some of the physical infrastructure in this place, all the mountainous terrain, like I don't understand. And again, very hot temps, like year round. I'm again applauding the ingenuity and the focus and determination for these folks to put all this together. And another piece for this is, as we round this out, is, on that longer, like 3-ish hour drive back to the airport and so forth, still the vast majority of the country and, the actual Costa Ricans, have a, lower socioeconomic status and rough houses, probably don't have AC, even being in an area, so hot, and humid like that. Uh, Drying clothes out on the line and so forth. Again, it's just kind of classic, what you might think of like developing country infrastructure that just has been kind of unchanged for the last 50 to 100 years, roughly. And so you still see a ton of that, and you're like, man, that is just seems like a really tough life. And it's hard to, because humans adapt, if you don't really have a choice. And my understanding is that Costa Rica is actually one of the happiest countries in the world. You kind of felt that there, I think, especially in the Nosara, and it's one of those blue zones where people just live longer on average as well. Slower pace of life, but still, like, me being accustomed to just a fairly good US setup, and how much we have at our disposal of just always quality internet and quality shelter, and nice roads and sewer and drinking water, and quick logistics through Amazon to get things delivered, large choices of food and all of that. Like, it is still such a striking contrast in relation to how much the rest of the world actually lives and operates. And, it still goes back to the fact that, even though a lot of these folks just have so little to their actual names here, like they still have to have a place to live. They still have to figure out, how are we going to build a roof that can at least sustain their lives and their families' lives here. And, again, still mountainous terrain and not some of those bougie luxury houses in Nosara, but they're still figuring out a way to level out the ground, and build some real vertical improvements to get things done. And again, I was just reflecting on this during the ride of, like, yeah, our opportunity is never going to go away. Like, there's always going to be more you can do within the land and just real estate game in general here. And also when we go back to that point of like the competition and, the woe is me type of attitude here, like it's just worth reminding yourselves some of these times of just what type of lives a lot of folks around the world are actually living. And like they don't even have a chance to compete. Like it is just, some of the shuttle van drivers, for instance, going like back and forth every day, these 3-hour one-way trips to the airport and back to the hotel, like that is just a rough existence, like in my opinion. And you have so little time for being able to kind of pull yourself out potentially of that situation. And again, some folks like they maybe that is what they want to do, but I imagine that's not the case for a lot of these workers and citizens in developing countries like this. And so again, where we have everything at our fingertips for most of us in the US, and I know it's a lot of controversies ongoing at the moment, and folks questioning their country's motives potentially, and all that too. But nevertheless, when you see just how contract other folks' lives are in comparison to what we have at our fingertips, and all the AI and workflows and so forth, like it recenters yourself to realize if you aren't able to win with this type of lead and this type of education and resources at your disposal, even if you're on the poor side in the US, like that's on you ultimately, because so many folks, billions of people, have it way harder. Like they're not even competing, they don't even have a chance to compete against you. And a lot of folks are complaining about not being able to figure out how to take advantage of the opportunities in front of themselves. So a little bit more philosophical here, and sharing some of the journey. A weird time to go on a trip. I brought my wife and my daughter down with me, and they had a really nice time, and introduced them. But the total amount of travel here, especially the longer car rides and all that, would just make me think twice in comparison to more domestic travel, or things that don't require great distance from an airport. But again, what am I complaining about when a 12-hour travel day from central Texas to a southern portion of Central America, when 100 years ago that would likely take weeks, if not months, to accomplish, if at all possible. So again, we have to keep all of that in perspective. So wanted to share that with you all. Subscribe and share if you found this helpful. Looking forward to next time. Take care, everybody. Bye.